Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to stay updated with our latest stories. The late afternoon sun was slanting through the kitchen window, bathing the worn oak table in a warm, golden glow. I was humming along to an old jazz tune on the radio, kneading dough for the sort of bread I'd love to make. The scent of yeast and flour filled the air, a comforting aroma that always made me feel grounded. It was a typical Tuesday, quiet and predictable, just the way I liked it these days. Ever since my husband Tom passed away 5 years ago, I'd found solace in these simple rhythms. My kids were grown, living their own busy lives, and the house, once bustling, now held a peaceful hush. I was 62, a widow, content in my solitude, or so I thought. Then there was a knock at the back door. A hesitant, almost shy rap. I wiped my floured hands on my apron and walked over, a little surprised. Most folks used the front door, or at least called first. Through the frosted glass, I could just make out a tall figure. When I opened it, there stood Arthur, my next-door neighbor. Arthur. He'd moved in about a year ago, into the house that had been empty for ages after the Millers moved to Florida. He was a quiet man, probably in his late 60s, with a kindly face framed by a shock of silver hair that always seemed a little unruly. He kept to himself mostly, tending his garden with a methodical precision that I admired from afar. We'd exchanged polite waves, a few brief chats about the weather or the health of our rose bushes, but nothing more substantial. He was a widower too, I knew that much, his wife having passed some years before Tom. He stood there, a little awkwardly, holding a small, chipped ceramic pot. Inside it, a tiny, struggling fuchsia plant looked rather forlorn. "Martha," he began, his voice a gentle rumble, a bit deeper than I remembered. I apologize for just showing up. My fuchsia, it's not doing so well. And I recall you have quite the green thumb with these. Mine seem to just give up on me." He offered a tentative smile, a touch of embarrassment in his eyes. I couldn't help but smile back. The plant did look pathetic, but there was something endearing about his earnestness. "Oh, Arthur, of course. Come on in. Let's see what we can do for this little fellow." I stepped aside, opening the door wider. He hesitated for a moment, then stepped into the warmth of my kitchen. He seemed to take in the scent of baking bread, the jazz music, the general lived-in comfort of the room. His eyes, a soft, faded blue, lingered for a moment on the picture of Tom and me on the refrigerator. "Smells wonderful in here," he murmured, almost to himself. "It's sordo. Just about ready for the second rise," I explained, gesturing to the bowl on the counter. "Now, let's see this fuchsia of yours." I took the pot from him, examining the droopy leaves. "Looks like it might be overwatered, and perhaps not enough sunlight. Fuchsias are particular, aren't they?" We stood there for a few minutes, me offering advice, him listening intently. I suggested repotting it with fresh soil, and maybe moving it to a spot on his porch that got morning sun but afternoon shade. He nodded, absorbing every word. There was a quiet intensity about him, a genuine desire to learn. It wasn't just about the plant, I realized. It was about connecting. "Thank you, Martha," he said, his gaze meeting mine. "That's very helpful. I appreciate your time." He shifted his weight, as if preparing to leave. "Oh, don't be silly, Arthur," I said, feeling a sudden urge to prolong the conversation. It wasn't often I had adult company other than the occasional phone call with my daughter. "Would you like a cup of tea? Or coffee? The kettle's just come to a boil." He hesitated again, then a small smile touched his lips. "Tea would be lovely, if it's no trouble." "No trouble at all," I replied, turning to get the mugs. The easy flow of the conversation, the simple act of offering hospitality, felt surprisingly pleasant. I found myself wondering, as I poured the steaming water into the teacups, what Arthur's life was like, alone in that house next door. Did he often feel the quiet hum of solitude that I did? We settled at the kitchen table, the fuchsia plant now safely placed on a sunny windowsill, looking slightly less dejected. The jazz music played softly in the background. Arthur held his teacup in both hands, letting the warmth seep into them. He seemed more relaxed now, the initial awkwardness having dissipated. "So, Arthur," I began, stirring a spoon of honey into my own tea, "what do you do with yourself these days? Besides battling fuchsias, I mean." I tried to keep my tone light, inquisitive, not prying. He chuckled, a low, gentle sound. "Well, mostly my garden, as you've observed. It keeps me busy. And I've been trying my hand at woodworking again. Used to do a bit of it when I was younger, before life got in the way." His gaze drifted towards the window, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. I knew what he meant. Before loss reshaped everything. "Woodworking, really?" I said, genuinely interested. My Tom, he had a workshop out back. Used to spend hours out there, making all sorts of things. Birdhouses, little wooden toys for the grandkids. Said it calmed his mind. Arthur turned back to me, a hint of sadness, but also understanding, in his eyes. "It does, doesn't it? The rhythm of the tools, the smell of the wood. It's a good kind of quiet." He took a slow sip of his tea. "I've been working on a small cedar chest. For bits and bobs, you know. Keepsakes." "That sounds lovely," I said softly, picturing him, alone in his own garage, lost in the quiet concentration of creation. It was a familiar image, one that resonated deeply with my own memories of Tom. It's good to have something to pour yourself into, isn't it? Especially when life changes so drastically. He nodded slowly, his gaze meeting mine across the table. In that moment, there was a shared understanding, a silent recognition of the grief we both carried, the invisible weights that shaped our days. It wasn't a heavy or somber feeling, though. More like a quiet bond, a gentle acknowledging of common ground. The air in the kitchen, already warm from the sun and the tea, seemed to grow even warmer, more intimate. "I've noticed your garden," he said, shifting the topic slightly, but maintaining the connection. "Your roses are spectacular. What's your secret?" We talked about gardening then, about soil amendments and pruning techniques, about the joys of watching something grow and flourish under your care. It was an easy, unforced conversation, flowing naturally from one topic to the next. I found myself laughing more than I had in weeks, a genuine, bubbling laugh that felt good in my chest. Arthur had a dry wit, a subtle humor that unfolded slowly, like a shy blossom. He told me a funny story about a persistent squirrel that had outsmarted all his attempts to protect his bird feeder. His eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled, revealing faint lines that spoke of a life lived, of sorrows and joys. As the afternoon wore on, the golden light in the kitchen began to soften, turning to a deeper amber. The sourdough, sensing the passage of time, had risen beautifully in its bowl. I glanced at the clock. It was later than I thought. Over an hour had passed since Arthur had knocked on my door. "Well," he said, sensing the time, and perhaps my subtle shift in attention towards the rising dough, "I shouldn't keep you from your baking, Martha. Thank you for the tea and for the fuchsia advice. I'll give it my best shot." He made to stand up, his teacup empty. "Wait," I said, a thought bubbling up, impulsively. "The sourdough. It'll be ready to bake in about half an hour. Would you Would you like to stay for a slice? It's best when it's fresh out of the oven with a little butter." The words were out before I could second-guess them. It was a simple offer, a neighborly gesture, but as I looked at his kind face, I realized it was more than that. It was an invitation, a tentative step beyond the polite fence of our separate lives. He paused, his hand hovering over the back of his chair. His gaze met mine, and for a fleeting moment I saw a flicker of surprise, then something akin to gratitude in his faded blue eyes. A warmth spread through me, a quiet satisfaction. This unexpected visit was turning into something more, something good. Arthur settled back into his chair, a relaxed sigh escaping him. "That sounds mighty tempting, Martha." "Very tempting indeed. A fresh slice of sourdough would be a real treat." His voice held a warmth that matched the soft glow of the kitchen. I smiled, pleased. "Excellent. It won't be long now. Why don't you tell me more about this cedar chest you're working on?" I gestured towards the empty teacups. "More tea?" He accepted another cup, and as I refilled it, he began to speak about his woodworking projects with a quiet enthusiasm. He described the grain of the cedar, the challenges of getting the joints just right, the satisfaction of creating something tangible with his own hands. He even pulled out his phone, a surprisingly modern smartphone for a man who seemed to prefer the analog world, and showed me a few pictures of his work. There was a delicate wooden jewelry box, a sturdy bookshelf, and indeed a work-in-progress shot of the cedar chest. His hands, though slightly gnarled with age, looked strong and capable in the photos. "That's beautiful, Arthur," I said, genuinely impressed. "You're very talented." He shrugged, a faint blush rising on his cheeks. "Just a hobby, really. Keeps my mind occupied." But I could see the pride in his eyes. He talked about the different types of wood, the tools he used, the challenges he faced. I found myself listening intently, asking questions, truly engaged. It was a world so different from my own, yet his passion was infectious. As he spoke, I preheated the oven, the warmth radiating from it adding to the cozy atmosphere. The sourdough, plump and ready, slid onto a baking sheet, and the delicious, yeasty aroma intensified as it began to bake. The kitchen filled with the comforting sense of home, and the gentle sounds of our conversation, punctuated by the occasional crackle of the gas oven. Then he paused in his description of dovetail joints. "Martha," he said, his voice a little softer, a more hesitant note returning, "if it's not too much trouble, I'd be honored if you'd consider coming over sometime. To see my workshop, I mean. It's not much, just a corner of my garage, but you might find it interesting, given your Tom's fondness for it." He looked at me, a hopeful vulnerability in his eyes. My heart fluttered again, a small, unexpected skip. He was opening up, extending another invitation, stepping further out of his shell. And the thought of seeing his workshop, of stepping into his private world, felt appealing, intriguing. It was a connection that went beyond neighborly politeness. It was a glimpse into his soul, a sharing of something deeply personal. "I'd like that very much, Arthur," I said, my voice gentle. "I'd like that a lot." A wave of relief seemed to wash over his face, replaced by a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Good," he said simply. "Good." The timer for the bread dinged then, breaking the quiet moment. I pulled the golden brown loaf from the oven, its crust perfectly crisp, its aroma intoxicating. I sliced it while it was still warm, the steam curling into the air. I spread a generous pat of butter on a thick slice and handed it to him. He took a bite, his eyes closing for a moment in pure appreciation. "Oh, Martha," he mumbled around the bread, This is truly something special. Nothing like homemade sourdough." We ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes, savoring the simple pleasure of warm bread and shared company. The sun had finally dipped below the horizon, and the kitchen was now bathed in the soft glow of the overhead light, creating a cozy, intimate cocoon. The jazz music continued its mellow rhythm, a perfect soundtrack to this unexpected, yet deeply felt, connection. I looked at Arthur, at the content expression on his face, and a profound sense of warmth settled in my chest. It wasn't just about the bread or the fuchsia or the woodworking. It was about the quiet unraveling of loneliness, the gentle weaving of new threads into the fabric of a life that I thought was already complete. It was about discovering that even in the autumn of life, new blossoms could appear, unexpected and beautiful. And as the evening deepened, I realized that this simple visit, initiated by a struggling plant, had indeed turned into something truly extraordinary. The invitation to Arthur's workshop hung in the air between us, a new, delicate thread in our burgeoning connection. A few days later, after tending to my own garden and a particularly long phone call with my daughter, I found myself drawn to the idea of finally taking him up on it. It wasn't just curiosity about his woodworking. It was a desire to explore this quiet friendship that was blossoming. I walked over to his house around mid-morning, the sun bright and cheerful, chasing away the lingering morning chill. I knocked tentatively on his back door, the same door he'd knocked on just days before. He answered almost immediately, as if he'd been expecting me. He was wearing an old work shirt, dusted with sawdust, and a pair of worn jeans. A faint scent of freshly cut wood emanated from him. "Martha." Come in," he said, his smile genuine and welcoming. Perfect timing. I was just about to start on a new piece for the chest. He led me through his kitchen, which was surprisingly neat, though a little sparsely decorated compared to my own. It had a bachelor's practicality to it, but a warmth too. We stepped out into his attached garage, and I immediately understood his enthusiasm. It was a proper workshop, not just a corner. Tools hung meticulously on pegboards, each in its place. There was a sturdy workbench, a band saw, and the faint, sweet smell of various woods. It was a space of quiet industry, of focused creation. "This is wonderful, Arthur," I exclaimed, truly impressed. "Tom would have loved this. It reminds me so much of his own space." My voice held a slight catch as I said Tom's name, a familiar ache, but it was also a comforting connection to a part of my past. Arthur nodded. "I thought it might. It's a good space. Come, let me show you what I'm working on." He led me to his workbench, where a few pieces of richly grained cedar lay, ready for assembly. He explained the design for the lid of his cedar chest, showing me the intricate joinery he planned to use. He spoke with such passion, his hands moving to demonstrate cuts and angles, that I found myself completely captivated. I watched him as he carefully selected a piece of wood, secured it, and began to work with a small hand plane. The shavings curled away, thin and fragrant, revealing the smooth, polished surface beneath. He moved with a quiet precision, his movements economical and practiced. There was a calm focus about him, a man completely absorbed in his craft. It was beautiful to witness. We spent a good hour in the workshop. He showed me different types of wood, explained the purpose of various tools, and even let me run my hand over the incredibly smooth surface of a finished piece of cherry wood. I asked questions, and he answered patiently, his eyes alight with the joy of sharing his passion. It wasn't just a tour, it was a sharing of worlds, a mutual appreciation for the things that brought us solace and purpose. As we talked, I learned more about him. He had been an engineer before he retired, a detail-oriented man who found comfort in precision. His wife, Eleanor, had been a painter, and he spoke of her with a gentle reverence, showing me a small, vibrant watercolor she had painted, which hung on the workshop wall. He mentioned how much he missed her artistic eye, her ability to see beauty in the everyday. It was a subtle, poignant reminder of the shared losses that connected us. "She would have loved your garden, Martha," he said, his voice soft, his gaze lingering on the watercolor. "She always admired vibrant colors. Perhaps she would have liked my fuchsias too, once they recover," I offered, a little sadly. "I'm still hoping yours pull through." He chuckled, a warm sound. "With your advice, I'm sure they will. They're getting more sun, and I've been very careful with the watering can." There was a quiet humor in his voice, and I smiled. It was a small thing, this fuchsia plant, but it was a bridge, a gentle catalyst for something more. As the morning drifted towards noon, I knew I should be heading home. "Well, Arthur," I said reluctantly, "I've kept you from your work long enough. Thank you for showing me all of this. It's truly fascinating." He turned from his workbench, a faint dusting of sawdust on his hair. "Not at all, Martha. It was a pleasure, a real pleasure to have you here." His gaze held mine, and in his eyes I saw not just gratitude, but a quiet appreciation, a shared sense of comfort that had deepened unexpectedly. The air in the workshop, filled with the scent of wood and the echoes of our conversation, felt warm and inviting. This visit had cemented something. It wasn't just neighborly chats anymore. It was friendship, gentle and unfolding, rooted in shared loss and blossoming in shared interests. And as I stepped back into the bright sunlight, I realized how much I was looking forward to the next unexpected visit. The days that followed Arthur's workshop tour settled into a comfortable routine, a quiet evolution of our newfound friendship. He'd occasionally bring over a struggling plant for my advice, or I'd drop off a slice of fresh-baked pie. Our conversations grew longer, more personal. We talked about our children, the challenges of aging, the simple joys we found in our solitary lives. It was comforting, this easy companionship, a gentle balm for the quiet ache of loneliness I hadn't realized I still carried. One particularly blustery afternoon, a sudden, fierce storm swept through. Rain lashed against the windows, and the wind howled like a banshee. My electricity flickered, then died, plunging the house into a sudden, unsettling darkness. I fumbled for a flashlight, and just as I found it, there was a tentative rap at the back door. It was Arthur, standing there, a large, sturdy lantern in his hand, its warm glow cutting through the gloom. "Martha, are you all right? Power's out over here too," he said, his voice carrying concern over the wind. "Thought you might need a hand, or at least some light." "Arthur, you're a lifesaver," I exclaimed, genuinely relieved. The sudden darkness had been more unsettling than I cared to admit. Come in. It's certainly a wild one out there." He stepped inside, and the comforting light of his lantern filled the kitchen. We found candles, and soon the room was bathed in a soft, flickering glow. He checked the fuse box for me, though it was clearly a neighborhood-wide outage. As the storm raged outside, we sat at the kitchen table, illuminated by candlelight, sipping hot chocolate I'd made on my gas stove. The atmosphere was surprisingly cozy, almost magical. We talked for hours that night, the storm providing a dramatic backdrop. He spoke more deeply about Eleanor, about their life together, their travels, the little quirks that made her unique. I, in turn, found myself sharing more about Tom, about our early days, the dreams we built, the way his laughter could always brighten my darkest days. There was a raw honesty in our confessions, a vulnerability born of the shared experience of loss and the intimacy of the candlelight. We weren't just neighbors. We were two souls finding solace in each other's understanding. "You know, Martha," he said softly, his eyes reflecting the candlelight, it's good to talk about them, to keep their memories alive, not just in our own heads, but by sharing them." "It truly is, Arthur," I agreed, a warmth spreading through me. It was liberating, this unburdening of memories, this shared space for grief and love. There was no judgment, only empathy and a quiet acceptance. As the storm began to subside, the drumming rain turning to a gentle patter, I felt a shift. A subtle, almost imperceptible current of something new. It wasn't just friendship anymore. It was a deeper connection, a gentle pulling, like two separate rivers finding a shared course. There was a tenderness in his gaze, a quiet attentiveness that made me feel truly seen, truly heard. And I realized with a quiet jolt that I felt a similar tenderness towards him. It was a delicate, unexpected feeling, like a rare late-season bloom. Eventually, the power flickered back on, banishing the candlelight, though its soft glow lingered in our minds. The sudden brightness was almost jarring. Arthur stayed for a little longer, helping me put away the candles, and then, as the last of the storm blew over, he made to leave. "Thank you, Arthur," I said genuinely as he stood at the door. "For everything. For the light, for the company, for listening." He smiled, a gentle, understanding smile. "Any time, Martha. Truly. I enjoyed it immensely. More than I can say." His faded blue eyes held mine for a moment, and in that gaze I felt a profound sense of connection, a silent acknowledgement of the beautiful, unexpected turn our lives had taken. As he stepped out into the damp, newly quiet night, I found myself standing in my kitchen, a warmth radiating through me, a feeling that went beyond mere friendship. It was a feeling of hope, of possibility, of a heart that was, surprisingly, beginning to unfurl its petals once more. The weeks that followed the storm deepened our bond further, turning the gentle stream of our friendship into something more profound. We started taking regular walks together in the evenings, admiring the changing colors of the autumn leaves, discussing everything from local politics to the mysteries of the universe. Sometimes he'd bring over a small, beautifully crafted wooden item from his workshop, a perfectly smoothed bookmark, a tiny, intricate bird carved with such delicate detail. Each one was a silent token of his thoughtful presence in my life, and I cherished them. I, in turn, baked him his favorite sort of bread regularly, and often made him extra portions of my hearty stews and comforting casseroles, which he always accepted with a grateful smile and a shy compliment. It was a quiet exchange of care, a comforting rhythm that spoke volumes without needing many words. My house felt less empty, is less solitary. Our once separate lives were now intertwined, not in a demanding way, but in a gentle, supportive embrace. One crisp Saturday morning, Arthur called. "Martha," he said, his voice holding a hint of excitement. "I've finished the cedar chest. It's exactly as I envisioned it, and I was wondering if you'd like to be the first to see it. Perhaps you could join me for dinner tonight? I could grill some salmon, if you'd like. A small celebration." My heart skipped. Dinner. At his house. It was a significant step, a clear invitation into a deeper level of intimacy. I felt a flutter of nervousness, but also a surge of warmth. "I'd love to, Arthur," I replied, my voice a little breathless. "Salmon sounds wonderful." That evening, I dressed with more care than I had in years, choosing a soft blue sweater that I knew brought out the color in my eyes. I walked over to his house as dusk settled, carrying a bottle of nice red wine I'd been saving. When he opened the door, he was wearing a crisp, freshly ironed shirt, and his unruly silver hair was, for once, neatly combed. He looked handsome, a quiet handsomeness that I was only just beginning to truly see. His house, though still practical, felt different that evening. The dining table was set with a simple but elegant tablecloth, and there was a single, fragrant rose in a vase. Soft jazz music played in the background, a nod, I suspected, to my own preference. He led me straight to his workshop. There, in the center of the room, stood the cedar chest. It was magnificent. The wood glowed with a deep, rich luster, the grain a swirling masterpiece. The lid, which he'd worked on during my visit, fit seamlessly, a testament to his skill. It was more than just a chest. It was a work of art, infused with his patience and dedication. "Oh, Arthur," I whispered, running my hand over the smooth, worn wood. "It's absolutely stunning. Truly, truly beautiful." He watched me, his faded blue eyes alight with pleasure. "I'm glad you like it, Martha. It means a lot, knowing you appreciate it." He opened the lid, revealing the empty, fragrant interior. "It's ready for keepsakes now, for memories." His gaze held mine, and in that look, I felt a profound connection, an unspoken understanding that went beyond the physical object. We shared a delicious dinner of perfectly grilled salmon and fresh vegetables, accompanied by the red wine. The conversation flowed easily, comfortably. We talked about our lives, our hopes, the quiet comfort we'd found in each other's company. There was a tenderness in his gaze, a quiet admiration that made my heart feel light and full. As the evening drew to a close, and we sat by the fireplace, the last embers casting a warm glow, Arthur turned to me. His hand, slightly rough from his work, reached for mine, intertwining our fingers. His touch was gentle, warm, and utterly natural. "Martha," he began, his voice low, a hint of nervousness, but also a deep sincerity. I know this might be unexpected, and perhaps a little fast, but these past few weeks, getting to know you, sharing things, it's been a revelation. You've brought a lightness back into my life that I didn't think was possible." He squeezed my hand gently. I've found myself falling for you, Martha. Gently, quietly, but undeniably." My breath caught in my throat. My own feelings, which I'd kept tucked away, unexamined, suddenly surfaced, clear and undeniable. The tenderness, the connection, the quiet joy he brought into my life. I'd looked at him, at his kind, earnest face, his eyes full of a hesitant hope. "Arthur," I whispered, my voice a little shaky, I feel it too. This connection. It's been so unexpected, so wonderful." A tear, warm and surprising, trickled down my cheek. It wasn't a tear of sadness, but of a profound, hopeful joy. It was the realization that life, even in its autumn, held the promise of new springs, new blossoms, new beginnings. And as his thumb gently brushed away my tear, I knew, with absolute certainty, that this visit from my neighbor had indeed turned into something truly extraordinary, something beautiful and deeply, wonderfully real.